Hello, today's finally time for a new sourdough recipe. So lately, my husband and I have been really loving this new recipe with barley malt and walnuts. It's amazing. It's one of the best breads, if not the best bread we've ever eaten. So really hope that you're going to enjoy it as well. And let's get started. The star ingredient, of course, is a sourdough starter. This one has been fermented overnight, and by the time I was ready to use it, it was basically double this size. Look at this beauty. So I'm going to use 200 grams of that. If it's really cold, I increase it to maybe 250, 240 grams. And then I'm adding around 600 grams of water. Depending on where you live, on your flour, you might need a little bit less or a little bit more water. It's different in every single country, so just do whatever feels right for you. Then I'm going to whisk everything with my Dutch whisk to dissolve that starter. It's nice and foamy by this point. The next ingredient is the barley malt. It's really dark. It looks just like this, kind of like blackstrap molasses. And I'm going to use 3 tablespoons of that. It gives a beautiful darker color, but it also gives a little bit of a sweet taste. Not too much, just a tiny hint. Then I whisk everything together to dissolve it as well. And as you can see, the sourdough and water mixture became so much browner and nicer looking already. Next ingredient is 700 grams of white spelt flour and then 300 grams of whole grain wheat flour, so 1000 grams of flour in total. And then I'm going to take my Dutch whisk again, which by the way is probably one of my most used tools of all times. It's so universal, it works for everything. And I just do a rough mixing of everything. I just clean up all the walls really well, but I don't finish mixing. Because for the final mixing, I always take a dough scraper, and I use that because it's so much easier. So I just scrape off all the sides once again, and then I pick up all the loose flour from the bottom, and it just makes things so much easier. But again, this is just a rough mixing. It doesn't have to be perfect. It should be really quick, no more than a couple of minutes. And then I'm going to leave it there for around 30 minutes to allow the flour to absorb all that water, and it will be so much easier to work with. Once the time is up, it's time for a few more ingredients. So first I'm going to quickly process my walnuts. You can use your hands and a knife, but I just find it so much quicker using a food processor. I just give it a few small pulses like that, and it's perfect. It's not too fine and there are not too many big pieces. It's just what I need. And then I also add some sea salt, fine sea salt, and all the ingredients are listed down in the description box, so you don't have to catch all of them while you're watching the video. Next, of course, I'm adding those walnuts and around 30 grams of water. This is just going to make that folding so much easier. So next I am kneading everything really well. So I use 2 methods. First is the pincer method, which in my case I think is more like a pinching method, and I think it works really well for me. So I just pinch the dough like this, and then I stretch it and fold it onto itself. And I generally do it for around 7 minutes to 10 minutes until all that extra water is incorporated and the walnuts are distributed evenly throughout the whole dough. And towards the end, the dough is going to become so much more elastic and so much more pliable and so much more smooth. That's when you'll know that it's ready. So this is what it's going to look like during the last pinching and stretch and fold bit right at the end. So as you can see, it's really elastic and soft by now, and so much smoother on the surface as well. Then I'm going to cover it and leave it for 30 minutes. So now I'm going to do 3 or 4 sets of stretch and fold. So this is the first one. I'm just doing 1 set on all the 4 sides, as you can see. Now this is the second time, and you can see how the dough is even more elastic and smoother than before. And then again, I'm leaving it for 30 minutes. And this was the last one, the third one. Look at it now. Once all the stretch and folds are finished, I'm going to leave that dough fermenting for another 3 to 4 hours. Bear in mind that in my flat, there are around 21 degrees Celsius at the moment, so that's how long it will take me. But it really depends on how warm or how cold it is in your house. So if it's colder, you will need quite a bit more time, and if it's warmer you will need less time. So just watch the dough, and when it's grown by around 50%, when it's expanded by around 50%, that's when it's ready for the next step, which is shaping. So once it's ready to be shaped, I slowly and gently take it out of the bowl without breaking any of the gluten strands, just like this. And then I sprinkle some flour on top. I take my dough scraper and I divide the dough into 2 equal pieces. Then I take the first piece and I flip it, and then I fold it in half. So basically the unfloured surface is on the inside. And then I pre-shape it into this rough shape. It doesn't have to be perfect at all. This is just literally just a pre-shape. And then I do the same with the second one. And then I'm going to sprinkle a tiny bit of flour on top once again, cover it with a towel and leave it for 30 minutes to rest. Once the time is up, it's time for the final shaping. So I flip it once again with a floured surface to the bottom, and then I form it into this rectangle. I fold it onto itself, then I fold the other side on top, and then I roll it up just like this. And then I do this move, which is going to create a perfectly round shape, and it's also going to create a lot of tension on the surface. So I just keep doing it until I feel that there is enough tension, and that's what is making sure that the loaf is going to have a lovely shape when it's baked. Before I start shaping, I also sprinkle some mixture of corn flour and white flour in my bannetons to make sure that the dough doesn't stick to them. And then I just plop the loaf into the banneton with the seam side up. Then I do the same with the second one, exactly the same process. All done. Then I just put those 2 bannetons in plastic bags to make sure that they don't dry out, and then I either pop them in the fridge if I'm not going to bake them quickly, or I leave them out to proof for around 2 to 3 hours. Again, it really depends on the temperature. Just before they're ready, it's time to preheat the oven and the Dutch oven itself. So I preheat it to the maximum my oven will go, which is 250 degrees Celsius, and I leave it in there for 20 minutes. Then it's time for the finger test. If the dough is ready, when it's pressed with a floured finger, it's going to spring back slowly. So as you can see, in my case, it's perfectly ready to go into the oven. So then I slowly and gently ease it out of the bannetons, because sometimes it can really stick to the sides. And then I drop it into the Dutch oven. Then it's time to score it. And I just like making 3 bigger lines and then 2 smaller ones on the side. And I close the lid, pop the Dutch oven inside, lower the temperature to 230 degrees and cook it for around 20 minutes. Then I remove the lid and cook it for another 17 minutes at the same temperature. And voila, the sourdough bread is ready. Because of the barley malt, it has such a beautiful brown color. It's not burnt at all, it's just how malted bread looks like. Just make sure you wait for at least 30 minutes. Even better if you wait for an hour before slicing into it, because it keeps kind of cooking and developing itself after being taken out of the oven. So just be patient and it's going to taste so much better. And here my husband and I are slicing it and going to have a look what's inside. Look at that. You can see all the pieces of the walnuts inside. It's super soft. And as always, we taste our bread by spreading some butter on it. And it tastes absolutely fantastic. As you can see, it's totally approved by my husband. He loves it. Thank you so much for watching. Happy baking, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.